Anthony Edwards has been the best clutch performer in the NBA this season. Let's break down just how he's done it and can it continue next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Happy game day. The shorthanded Timberwolves take on the Milwaukee Bucks tonight. No Rudy Gobert, no Anthony Edwards. We'll talk about that later, but I want to start today's show by talking about clutch Anthony Edwards. Ant has been the most clutch player in the NBA this season. We'll talk about why that is. The numbers bear that out very clearly. It's a shift in Ant's game. That had been a blind spot for a little while, an issue in his game. One of the very few warts that Anthony Edwards had in his game was a lack of success in crunch time situations. And I want to talk about what he's changed about his game this year that has made him so dangerous in those situations. And what better time than coming off a clutch performance on Sunday in the big win over the Spurs when Ant was, relatively quiet throughout the game, only made one three-pointer, but was awesome in the final few minutes of the game. So we're going to break down kind of bigger picture what he's done differently this season and, some of the context around that. We'll get into a little bit later in the show, some two-man pairings. We haven't looked at that in a while. What are the Wolves, just some observations from the Wolves two-man pairings that are used the most often. Then we'll get into a preview of Wolves Bucks tonight. We'll talk about the injuries, also the suspension to Rudy Gobert. He will not be playing tonight along with Ant. So lots to get to. Big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. All right. So one of the issues with Ant, one of the very few issues with his offensive game coming into the season was some criticism about how he performs in close late situations. And last year he was actually one of the league's worst in like game tying or potential go ahead shots in the final minute. He was like among guys who actually got an opportunity, right? I'm not talking about like a guy who shot one shot in that situation, but the star players, or at least the best player on the team who's going to get multiple opportunities throughout the season, it was not great at it. And there's a number of factors that play into it, but I think the biggest thing, well, first let's talk about the numbers, and then I'll get into what I think is different. Right now, and I'm going to quote, so these numbers are out there, but I'm just going to pull from, there's a great Twitter account, shout out to @WolfWiseStats on X. And they do a great job pulling some of these things together. And so I just want to shout them out because I'm just going to read the tweet. There's a couple of tweets. So one, listing out Ant's clutch shooting this year in clutch situations, he has an effective field goal percentage of 80.5%, which is insane, right? If you're not super familiar with what effective field goal percentage is, it essentially weights 3-point field goals appropriately, right? So field goal percentage is not a great measure of efficiency because all shots are the same, right? 2s and 3s, which obviously is not the case. 3-pointers are harder to make and they're worth more. So the correct way to evaluate a player's efficiency from the floor, if you're just going to use more traditional stats, is looking at the 3-point and 2-point percentage separately. But of course, the frequency with which certain players shoot certain shots varies. So effective field goal percentage is a pretty good way to adjust. It attempts to adjust, or it does adjust, for the fact that a 3-point field goal is worth 50% more than a 2-point field goal, right? So if you look at effective field goal percentage, Ant is 80.5%. The next best clutch season among players that have attempted at least 2 per game and 40 total clutch field goal attempts in the course of a season. This goes back to 1996. Ants is the best at 80.5%. And obviously we're not even halfway through the year. Number 2 is Reid from 2 years ago, 68.9%. So we're talking nearly 12 percentage points better than the next best. And there's some weird names on this list, which goes like, it also kind of the whole clutch thing is so wacky because there's some guys that just seem to be good at it, even if they're not like an all-time scorer. Like some of the guys, like CJ McCollum is a really nice scorer. He's on this list. Terry Rozier is on here twice. RIP to Terry Rozier's career, of course, with the ongoing investigation into what he's been up to off the floor. But he's on this list twice, which is kind of crazy. Bradley Beal's on here. Mehmet Okur is on here from 2007. That's crazy. He's number 9. But then there's some guys you'd expect, right? So Kyrie's second. Tyrese Halliburton's on here. There's a Steph Curry, and there's a Jamal Murray at number 10. So there's some noise with clutch stuff, right? Like there aren't always patterns. But as with everything, virtually everything, there is some nuance here too. And that's what I want to talk about today is what Ant's done differently about his game, or done differently in regards to his game this season. And then there's one other stat from Wolfwise Stats. They said they have this compared to the best clutch seasons from the top 10 volume clutch scorers over the last 30 years. Okay. So the peak efficiency years for the best volume clutch scorers. Ant is number 1. LeBron is number 2 at just over 61%. So Ant's 19.3 percentage points better than the next best, which is LeBron. And then it goes Chris Paul, James Harden, Ray Allen, DeMar DeRozan, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Dirk Nowitzki, Kobe Bryant, and Paul Pierce. So DeRozan is the only guy on that list that's not a Hall of Famer? Is that right? Yeah. I mean, you go on down that list, DeRozan's the only guy on that list that's not a Hall of Famer. Like, that's a really great list. And Ant is at the top of it. Of course, things can come back down to earth. That's partly what I wanted to talk about today. So what's changed the most with Anthony Edwards? Well, the obvious thing is the mid-range. And it's not just the mid-range itself. Like, that doesn't tell the whole story. It's everything else that it does for you. Like, think back to other clutch Timberwolves players and why they were good in crunch time. Like, even think about D'Angelo Russell. Like, D'Lo in a Timberwolves uniform was as clutch of a player as the Wolves had in a long time, because that's the type of shot D'Lo excelled at. He was able to get off isolation jumpers, mid-range jumpers in whenever he wanted to. And it's not the most efficient shot if it's a random shot in the middle of the game with 16 on the shot clock. It's far from the most efficient shot, but it's an important shot when you just need a shot. And everyone knows you're trying to get to the basket or you're going to create space to shoot a 3. Like, if you could get to that shot anytime you want and make it at a high clip and you're able to do it in a clutch situation, then that is money in the bank. It is a vital tool to have in your toolbox if you're going to be an elite scorer. And that was one of the things D'Lo was good at, was shooting those shots in crunch time. Because that's a shot you can get to at any time. And it doesn't make it the best shot in the middle of the first quarter at a random possession. But in this situation, like if you look at at a couple of these shots that Ant made late in the game against the Spurs, there was the mid-range turnaround he made over Stephon Castle before he gave him the too small gesture. That was like, hey, look, I could probably beat you off the dribble, but Wemby's behind you. I don't need to shoot a 3. I've got the ball on a string. I'm bigger than you. I'm going to back you down, and I'm going to shoot this turnaround fadeaway. And that in that situation, all that calculus plays into it, and it makes a lot of sense. Now, when Ant had Wemby on him on the switch, Ant even said post-game, like, he was thinking about shooting the 3. He was thinking about driving to the basket, but he ended up driving, but he shot kind of a runner off the glass on the right side of the lane. And that, falls into the category of essentially, it was an on-paint 2 that he didn't shoot a ton of last year. But because he's worked so much on that piece of the game, he can get that shot off whenever he wants to and make it at an extremely high clip to this point. The other thing that this does is the threat of the mid-range helps open up other shots and also passing lanes for teammates, but also 3-point shots. Like, that's part of this. Like, if you look at the way that the shots break down, and I'm looking at the graph tweeted out by Wolfwise Stats, Ant is 8 for 14 on clutch 3-point attempts this year. That's 57% from outside the arc. The threat of the mid-range and the fact that guys know that he can get past them to the basket or he'll shoot an 18-footer opens up 3-point attempts. And, of course, that number is by far the best of anybody on this list. Nobody that shot, DeMar DeRozan attempted 4 3-pointers in clutch situations in that season. So we're going to toss out his 50%. I mean, Dirk was 5 of 11 for 45%. Like, nobody else is shooting the volume to this point in the season, right? Because Ant's only played 14 clutch games. There's probably another 25 to go, right? 25, 30, maybe even clutch games to go. And Ant's 8 of 14 outside the arc in clutch situations. The threat of the mid-range opens up the three, which we know he can shoot off the dribble. He can shoot, catch, and shoot. These are mostly in ISO situations. And that just adds another layer. I want to talk about the actual, the shot mix overall, not just in clutch time, but talk clutch and then the context overall of the shot mix that Ant has this year, and why it's so impressive. And he just continues to get better and better and better offensively. I want to dig in on that just a little bit, talking about the different zones of the floor where he's been really good. We'll get into the two-man stuff, and then we'll talk Wolves Bucks to close the show. That's all upcoming here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at Game Time. During basketball season, there is nothing like being in the building. The energy, the crowd, the first big run that gets everyone on their feet. Fans want to be there for those moments, not stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are really going to cost. And that's where Game Time comes in. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage back, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets. Fast, simple, and without the guesswork. Browsing the Game Time app is straightforward and intuitive. Finding tickets takes just a few taps. Seeing the view from your seat before buying will help you easily choose your tickets and be confident in the location that you're picking. My favorite thing about it is that the prices include the fees up front so that the total is clear from the start. Plus, there's features like zone deals. They'll help you unlock great seats at even better value. Whether it's an NBA game or perhaps another live event, everything is right there in one place. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today and get in on the action. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is also brought to us by our friends at ZocDoc. Guys, it is 2025, almost 2026. Actually, it is 2026 now. And those days of waiting for something to become a full-blown emergency before you see a doctor, they're over in the year 2026. No more walking it off for 6 months. No more pretending that weird shoulder stiffness is just sleeping wrong. It's time to take your health seriously. And ZocDoc makes that easier than ever because staying healthy is more than just hitting the gym or eating right. It's about actually getting things checked out when something feels off. And ZocDoc, it's super easy to use. It makes scheduling easier if you're looking for that appointment. Search for in-network doctors and book right in the app. Plus, they'll list real appointment times. And that includes same-day visits as well. You can also compare providers using real patient reviews, not ads. And it makes it simple to help make your health a priority, even with your busy schedule. So stop putting off your doctor's appointments and get the care you need. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc, ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA, ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA. Big thank you once again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen of the day. And of course, thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out the new Everydayer Club. You get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Wolves compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. An invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server as well. That includes a group chat for listeners of each show. You can go to lockedonwolves.supercast.com. It's lockedonwolves.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. All right. So Ant has been clutch. We've talked about that. The mid-range shot has been huge. He can get it off at any time. It allows him to add another tool to the toolbox. The other thing that's beneficial about it is it's a really good spot to view the floor from. Now, we're talking about how good he shot the basketball, but it's also it's hard to double a guy with his back to the basket in the mid-range like that when you're surrounded by shooters. And in the Wolves small ball lineups, everyone can shoot, right? They don't have anybody out there that can't shoot when Rudy Gobert's off the floor. And even when Gobert's on the floor, Ant and Gobert have a nice chemistry. And you know, this is more in the pick and roll, but like on the short roll, he's trusting Rudy to play make a little bit. But when he's in the post, there's still the opportunity if you double off of Rudy, Ant can find him. We've seen that happen as well. And that's not just clutch situations either. It's just another element where Ant doesn't always have to be facing the basket and getting, two guys coming at him, blitzing him on the perimeter. You've seen multiple bodies. The gap help is a lot harder to give when you're not just facing up on the perimeter. So it's another creative way for Ant to get the ball. And that serves well in clutch time, but also throughout the course of the game. It's super important and super advantageous for Ant and for the Timberwolves offense. The crazy thing is, well, it seems like Anthony Edwards is shooting a ton of shooting a ton of mid-range shots this year, and he is compared to last year. It's still not as many mid-range shots as he was shooting just a couple of years ago. Last year was a dramatic shift toward three-pointers for Ant. Like he almost cut out the mid-range shot from his shot diet. And I'm going to pull the exact number here. So last season, Ant only shot 8% of his shots between 10 and 16 feet and 8% between 16 and 3. So 16% total from 10 feet to the three-point line. This year, he's shooting over 22% of his shots from there, 22.4% of his shots. So what is that? 6.5, almost 7% more of his shots from the 10 foot to between 10 feet and the three-point line. That's still way less than what he was doing just a few years ago. 2 years ago, he was shooting 24% of his shots from the 10 foot to the three-point line. So nearly a quarter of his shots were coming from there. And now he's about 22.5 to 23%. So it's still slightly below where it was, but the efficiency is through the roof. He's shooting a career high in virtually every zone on the floor. Currently a career high from 0 to, it is in every zone. A career high in 0 to 3%, 0 to 3 feet from the rim, 77%. A career high in the 3 to 10 foot zone. This is on Basketball Reference, 46%. A career high in the 10 to 16 foot zone, 46% there as well. And then from 16 feet out to the arc, 41% on long mid-range shots. And he's almost 41%. He's 40.9% from three-point range right now, which is a career high, slightly above, this time last year. I think he was actually a little above that even. But a career high from every area on the floor. That's crazy. And the shot diet it's a near perfect split right now. This is still the, it's actually like, this is Ant's 6th year, believe it or not. The first 2 years in the league, he was shooting more threes in terms of a rate-based shot shooting than he is this season, which is a crazy thing to think about. And then his first 2 All-Star years, that went way down to about just a little over a third of his shot attempts were covered for outside the arc. Last year was more than half of his shot attempts were threes, and now he's back to 41%. And the free throw rate is at a career high. So the free throw rate is a career high. The three-point rate is middle of the pack, but the percentage is his best. And he's shooting a career best from every range, every shooting range on every spot on the floor, if you will. It's crazy how he's kind of blended the shot mix to the most efficient possible as of right now. And he's only getting better. And that's on top of the playmaking stuff, which, as I mentioned a moment ago, based on where he's catching the ball on the floor, getting off the ball earlier in possessions, all that stuff has improved. And no, the assist rate's not where it was the last couple of years, but he's not, as much as was made about him playing point guard, quote unquote, earlier, like he's not really running the offense. The offense is running through him, but he's not really playing point guard. So much more of that is Julius Randle. It's still Mike Conley in the 12, 15 minutes he's on the floor in a game. But it's not like Ant's out there just running pick and roll, bringing the ball to the floor and going straight into a pick and roll, right? The usage rate is still very high. It's slightly below where it was the last couple of years. But the turnover rate, as of right now, is a career low. And I mean, just the other night, Ant had no turnovers, which is crazy for a guy who's got the ball in his hands as much as he does. We're witnessing a really masterful offensive season, given the burden that he's carrying with this Timberwolves offense. And also some of the stuff he's playing through, by the way, like he's not playing tonight because of the foot issue. He's playing through a bunch and he's playing great. I want to, this is something we're going to monitor, obviously, but just incredible. Also, by the way, I pulled up on Synergy, the different zones on the floor, and Synergy breaks it up into 4 different areas outside the arc. 5 areas outside the arc, 5 areas right inside the arc, and then the 10 feet right around the basket. In the 5 outside the arc areas, he's above league average in 4 of the 5 in terms of field goal percentage. Just inside the arc, he's above league average in 2 of the 5 and at league average in the other. That's the mid-range zone. He's below league average in 2. He's, for some reason, he's 12 of 42, which is 29% in that middle zone, which is like the top of the circle, right? Like the just above the free throw line out to the arc. He's only 29%, but he's 61% just to the right of that. He's 56% on the right baseline, or I guess left baseline if you're looking at the basket. And then within 10 feet of the rim, he's 65%, which again is just nuts. He's above league average. Like all told, there's 11 zones listed here. He's above league average in 7 of the 11 zones and league average in another one. He's only below league average in 3 of the 11 zones. Incredible. Just a really incredible offensive season so far for Anthony Edwards, and it's been a ton of fun to watch. I'm going to hit a real quick 2-man lineup thing. We'll spend more time on this later in the week. I have less time than I thought I was going to have to talk about it. We'll get into Wolves Bucks here in a second. We'll revisit the 2-man, but there's a couple points I want to make very quickly. We'll do that here next, and then we'll close out the show after we talk Wolves Bucks.
I carry a lot of responsibility in my household. If something happened to me, there would be serious consequences. We have a mortgage, we got tuition, we got everyday bills. Those aren't going anywhere if something happens to me. And I know that's an overwhelming feeling, but I'm taking steps to protect my family by getting life insurance through Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast, easy, and 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. And as of March 2025, Business Insider named Ethos the #1 no medical exam instant life insurance provider. Ethos has 4.8 out of 5 stars on Trustpilot with over 3,000 reviews. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LocdownNBA. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get your free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LocdownNBA. That's ethos.com/LocdownNBA. Ethos.com/LocdownNBA. Application times and rates may vary.
All right, real quickly, 2-man lineups here for the Timberwolves. NBA.com has these where I think it's valuable. You could obviously go 2-man, 3-man, 4-man, 5-man lineups. I talk about 5-man lineups all the time over on Cleaning the Glass, but I like being able to kind of filter through by the different 2-man pairings because I think it's pretty interesting. So NBA.com/stats, the Timberwolves' best 2-man pairing that's played at least 250 minutes together, which is a little bit arbitrary, but it felt like a decent enough sample size. And I think there's 70 different pairings. No, not 70. I did that math wrong. And it doesn't really matter. 70 would be a lot. It's not 70 pairings, but it's like, I don't know, 20 something pairings. So a very different number than I originally said. But of those pairings, the best one is Naz Reid and Bones Highland at a net rating of plus 14.5. Now it's only 279 minutes, which for comparison's sake, the most used 2-man pairing is 984 minutes. That's Rudy Gobert and Dante DiVincenzo. The Timberwolves have 5 pairings that have played over 900 minutes together. Actually 6 if you want to include Gobert and McDaniels, who have played 899 minutes together. So for context, it's a relatively low usage pairing, Bones and Naz, although it's obviously becoming increasingly more used based on Bones actually being in the rotation now. So in 279 minutes, they're a plus 14.5. The next best happens to be the most used lineup, the most used pairing, I should say. Gobert and Dante DiVincenzo are the most used pairing, and they're second next to Bones and Naz in terms of net rating among pairings. DiVincenzo and Gobert both have incredible on-off marks this year. We've talked about this frequently on the show, so this shouldn't really be a surprise. In fact, the top 2 pairings are DiVincenzo. It's Gobert and DiVincenzo, and then Randle and DiVincenzo. Then you get into Randle McDaniels, which is interesting. Then DiVincenzo again with McDaniels. Then Randle and Edwards. So Edwards appears in the 6th best lineup. They're a plus 4.2. I'm sorry, 6th most used lineup, Edwards and Randle together. If you want to look at the best lineups, it's Naz and Bones, then it's Gobert and DiVincenzo, Gobert and Randle, Randle and McDaniels, Randle and DiVincenzo, and then there's 3 more DiVincenzo lineups. So again, the on-off is crazy for DiVincenzo, but of the top 8 Timberwolves pairings this year, 6 of them include Dante DiVincenzo. Actually, 7 of the top 9 include Dante DiVincenzo, which is pretty fascinating. I don't know, like the Nas Bones thing is really interesting, and the offensive rating's obviously off the charts, but the defensive rating is really good too. Now, I think a big piece of that is the number of minutes, and I'm not going to drill super far down into this today, but how often those two are on the floor with 2 of Jalen Clark, Jaden McDaniels, and Rudy Gobert. And a lot of times it's Jalen Clark and Jaden McDaniels, and it's a smaller lineup. And with how switchable that group is and how good Jalen Clark is and how many extra possessions he steals, that's going to add to that. So I think that's pretty fascinating. And I'm curious to see, like, it's becoming increasingly, I think, more likely that the Wolves make a move, even if it's a smaller move at the trade deadline, which we're like, 3 weeks away from now? 3 weeks away. And so I don't know what happens to that Nas Bones pairing. It's still a relatively small sample, but they've done well together. And again, my theory on the defensive end is just the other guys they're out there with. On the offensive end, they're both just pure scorers, like getting after it, and just go score. Like, don't think about anything else. And that's important to have that attitude, first of all, coming off the bench, and also for a Wolves bench unit that has struggled for so much of the year to score. And this side of Nas has really struggled, even like Nikhil obviously did a good job scoring off the bench last year, but at times Nas was the only guy that could score off the bench and could generate his own offense. And Bones Highland adds somebody else that can do that. And so far the Bones experience, well, as expected, has been a roller coaster. Overall, he's brought significant punch to the Timberwolves bench unit, and that's super important. All right, we'll talk more about that later. Quickly, Wolves Bucks for tonight. No Rudy Gobert. He's been suspended due to hitting the limit of flagrant fouls. He accumulated his, I think, 7th flagrant foul point after the reckless closeout against Victor Wembanyama on Sunday. So he will not play Tuesday. And Anthony Edwards has already been ruled out. He was ruled out Monday afternoon by the team due to foot maintenance. I think it's right foot maintenance, foot soreness maintenance. He's been questionable like every game for the last week for that. And so the thinking here is, I'm sure, hey, look, we don't play till Friday. We give him Tuesday off against the team we could beat. The Bucks have struggled. Obviously, Giannis is incredible. But, I'd still pick the Wolves to win this game. You give them 4 full days off, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They have a big game against the Rockets on Friday, the first game they played against Houston all season. Of course, Houston now has actually dropped to 7th in the West, but obviously is going to be right in the thick of things, and was 2nd for most of the first part of the year in the Western Conference. So that's a huge game, and you're trying to get Ant as healthy as possible prior to that one. And there's another back-to-back at some point next week too. And of course, he played in both ends of the back-to-back this weekend too. The Wolves just played 6 games in 9 days and afforded themselves pretty well, by the way. But for somebody who's dealing with that foot soreness, now is the right time to get him some additional rest. So he will not play. The Bucks are healthy other than the injury that old friend Taurean Prince suffered. He's out for the year. But besides him, Giannis is back. He's played in several games in a row for the Bucks, and he's been great. Let's see. He's played in 8 games. They're 5-3 since Giannis came back. He's averaging 30 points a game, 29.9 points per game on 66% shooting from the field. He's shooting 2-point shots at a 69.6%. So basically a 70% clip since he's returned. He's also pulling down 9 boards a game, 4, really 5 assists and a steal per game since he came back. And the Bucks are 5-3. And they've beaten some bad teams. They've beaten Charlotte a couple of times. They beat the Bulls. They beat the Kings. And they beat the Lakers, who are struggling. They've lost to some bad teams, though, too. They lost the Wizards during that stretch. They also lost to Golden State and Denver. So, it's probably pretty close to a toss-up, honestly, in this game without Gobert and without Edwards. This game is in Milwaukee. It's like a 1-game road trip for the Wolves. All right, it's not a 1-game road trip, but because they come back, they don't play again until Friday. I'm sure the Wolves are coming home after they play in Milwaukee before they go back out on the road on Friday against Houston. So, what to look out for in this game? I mean, Milwaukee, there's not a whole lot, outside of Giannis, they don't really do a whole lot well at all. I don't really know what else to say about that. They're lower to mid in the pack and everything. They're 17th in offense, unclean the glass. They're 19th in defense. They foul a bunch. They don't get to line themselves this side of Giannis. They don't offensive rebound. They're dead last in offensive rebounding this season. The only thing they do well is they're efficient with their offense when Giannis has the ball in his hands. Like, it really is just Giannis. Kevin Porter's not an efficient player. They've got some guys that have been kind of revelations when they've gotten opportunities this year, whether it's, AJ Green, has been good for them. Although the scoring isn't like, he's averaging 10 a game, right? So he's been nice. They've got a handful of guys that maybe should be playing more, but there's still so much Kyle Kuzma and so much Bobby Portis, and Portis has been good, but Ryan Rollins, I think, is a really intriguing piece for them, and he has finally gotten to get a little bit more run with the Bucks, but I don't know, like, there just isn't a whole lot of consistency this side of Giannis, and Giannis is incredible, but there's not really much else to be too worried about when it comes to Milwaukee. They are second in 3-point percentage on the season, and they're 10th in 3-point rate. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Again, an offense that can be efficient at times. And that's kind of helped buoy their overall effective field goal percentage. I think is second in the league. A big part of that is Giannis. A huge part of that is Giannis. And then also the 3-point shooting has been good. Giannis, by the way, shooting the best 3-point percentage of his career, although the volumes come way down to just under 1.5 attempts per game, but he's 40% on threes. So in this game, if you're the Wolves, you shouldn't have to worry too much about the defensive glass. The Bucks are dead last in offensive rebound rate. Minnesota should try and give themselves some second bites at the apple on the offensive glass. I think that's an opportunity. And then also the Bucks foul a lot. They're bottom 5 in the league in fouling. So the Wolves, obviously Minnesota struggled a lot at the free throw line, just percentage wise. Turns out the Bucks actually have the worst free throw percentage in the entire league, and they don't even get to the line very often. Now, obviously Giannis is not a good free throw shooter, but like Kevin Porter is the only above average free throw shooter on this team that actually gets to the line. So they should win the free throw shooting battle. They should win the points of the paint and rebounding battle. The question is going to be, can they force the issue at the free throw battle? And then also the 3-point line, right? Like, Minnesota didn't shoot the three well. They did well enough on Sunday against the Spurs, ultimately down the stretch from outside the arc. But that's going to be the other thing, is if the Bucks shoot it and make a ton of threes, Minnesota's going to have to make up for that at the charity stripe. And I think they can do that, and also on the glass. So a very winnable game for the Wolves, even without Ant. Expect to see more Bones Highland. Expect to see more Jalen Clark. And then I think, depending on how the game goes, maybe it's even more Bones if they're behind, or if they're ahead, more Jalen Clark. Probably going to see some Jean Beringer. Like, I don't know. The Wolves already said Enrique Freeman's out because he's on the 2-way assignment. There's no Luka Garza, right? There's no, what was it? Jesse Edwards, I think, was the 2-way big from last year. Like, Beringer is like the only other backup big. Leonard Miller, I guess, would be a possibility. So I'm curious. Again, it could depend a little bit on the type of game. I think you're going to see some Beringer. I think Beringer, it wouldn't be fair to him to ask him to guard Giannis, but that would be a ton of fun. It should be a lot of fun. As we see some of these younger guys play, I don't think the Wolves would be expected to win given who's out, but I think it is a winnable game. And I think the Wolves should expect to win this game. And I'm excited to see if Beringer does get a bit of run, potentially the first rotation minutes, or it would be the first rotation minutes he's ever seen. That's something to look forward to, hopefully tonight. Of course, the live postcast with Jack and Luke will be on Locked On Wolves on YouTube. And then if you miss it, you can catch the audio right here at Locked On Wolves, wherever you listen to podcasts. I will be back early tomorrow. Really overnight, we'll post the post-game pod talking Wolves Bucks. So you have that to look forward to tomorrow as well. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. Reminder, if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Wolves ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonwolves.supercast.com to join the club. If you're watching on video, we'll send you to the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel afterward. Also on audio, if you're listening there, you can make your second listen, NBA Game Night, on Locked On NBA. Of course, Locked On Wolves is part of the same Locked On Podcast Network, your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.